especially students in our university who are working professionals, who are learning in asynchronous environments and who need that in order to pursue their degrees because they have 9-to-5 lives and responsibilities. We have to make an asynchronous virtual environment work. And what goes missing, what is conspicuously absent in any online experience is really the baseline, the indispensable feature of all teaching, no matter what that teaching is. And that is the human voice talking, speaking, one hopes, in intelligent ways, modeling critical inquiry, organizing information for the student and engaging that student in some way. It's difficult to do that, or has been difficult to do that, in an online environment. And one of the great challenges posed by all online teaching, no matter what course management software one's using, we're a Moodle university. I've also taught in WebCT, and I'm aware of Blackboard and Angel and others, is that it has a centrifugal tendency. It tends to push out rather than bring in. It tends to distribute well, but not focus very well. And it also encourages a kind of passivity on the part of the instructor and the students as well, where they are left, if you will, to kind of to share information that's been uploaded, to engage in various kinds of activities, but where facilitation rather than teaching seems to be the pedagogical practice. I didn't spend years getting a PhD to be a facilitator. I sought to be a teacher. And in order to teach effectively online, one has to act against the grain of this inbuilt passivity, this inbuilt facilitation model that's a function, I think, of all course management software. You have to bring personality into the space. You have to bring your humanity into the space. You have to bring, and this is where podcasting is so useful, the voice. Because really, since it is a disembodied environment, and no one cares what you're wearing or the fact that you're in your pajamas, it does, however, allow for the projection of personality through voice, which is where we as humans really do that effectively anyway. So podcasting allows me, first of all, before we get to any issues of content or any specific issues of pedagogy, to bring the human voice, the singular aspect of the classroom experience, into the virtual environment. And I can say, with respect to best practices and more instrumental kind of use of technology, that nothing has been more effective in my teaching than simply learning GarageBand and creating 1-hour lectures once a week where the students can listen and respond. There's a call and response. There's a true conversation rather than just accessing information that I've produced and that we then have some kind of discussion about. How I make the podcasts, well, they're kind of classic academic podcasts. They consist of 1-hour material every week. GarageBand's limitations are such that I can only work with about an hour, and that's enough for most people. I cut it with music, usually themed to the content I'm addressing that week. And then I combine it, not formally integrate it because I need some flexibility, but run it in tandem with an elegantly drawn PowerPoint. And what then, the outcome of this is a kind of talking book approach to the learning, where the student turns the pages of the PowerPoint, hears my voice speaking in a voiceover, and has as many of their senses as I can reach virtually until we get Feely vision, finally sort of made available to them. And this has warmed up the space. It's brought sweetness and light into online teaching, but profoundly it has humanized it, because all online instructors face what has been, kind of traditionally known as the machine in the garden problem. Education is supposed to be this rich, humane environment, this phenomenologically complex space where people encounter each other and ideas in a room and hopefully leave that room better for it. In an online environment, it's hard to reproduce that phenomenological richness. It's hard to give that layered quality that you find in the classroom. So podcasting, by bringing in the voice, by allowing the instructor to project her or his humanity and bind all the materials together in some organic way, really solves the problem of what's this machine doing in the garden of ideas? What's this machine doing in the educational environment? It makes that machine answer to fundamentally human and educational questions, and allows us to cheat the bias, if you will, of course management software, which again is centrifugal. is distributing, is very good at presenting information and archiving and organizing it, but not really good about bringing people together in effective ways.
A tablet really is just a laptop on which I can write in addition to showing printed words and pictures from textbooks and that sort of thing. And so with a tablet, what I really have is a projected image that marries what I would do normally with an overhead projector or a chalkboard with the ability to write right on those slides. It's referred to these days as inking your slides. And recently the technology has changed. It used to be not so long ago that you could ink on your PowerPoint slides, although rather crudely. In other words, you could add in text as you go during a class. But then when you moved to the next slide and then moved back to a previous slide that you had inked, all of that inking was lost. Well, recently that technology has changed drastically so that now all of your inking is retained. It can also be saved in a file after the presentation is over. And in fact, you can even make those inked slides available to students. For me, the best part of it is simply being able to annotate the PowerPoint slides that I'm presenting in class in much the same way that I would annotate an overhead transparency that I had put up for use in a classroom, where perhaps I would leave blank spots where I would like to add in some point form notes or add a figure or something like that. I can do that now, but using PowerPoint slides. And so in that respect, really, there isn't much difference. But what it has allowed me to do is to then have all of that rich media that's available with using a laptop and PowerPoint slides and the internet and animations and videos and that sort of thing. All of that can be integrated into the class very seamlessly. Whereas before, if I was using an overhead projector and I wanted to use those other sorts of media resources, I would have to bring in a laptop or a computer, set all that up, and of course you wouldn't be doing that with every class, and so there were all the associated problems with that. Now it's just a matter of whenever we wish to use those resources, we're just a click or two away from bringing those resources up right into our inked PowerPoints. And so it's created a much more interactive classroom, I think. Students are taking notes, but they're also being exposed to all this rich media. So for me, it's really the perfect marriage of all the new rich media with more traditional modes of teaching.
Well, critical thinking, thinking about their writing, their arguments, whether it's sort of posting a link to a magazine article. What do you think about this? What do you think about this magazine cover design? And then be able to get sort of multiple feedback from different people and react to that feedback as well, rather than just getting the same 4 or 5 hands that I might have gotten if I asked that question by putting it on a PowerPoint slide. I was one of those students when I was an undergrad who suffered, as they say, sort of esprit d'escalier. That sense of my best ideas always came when I left class afterwards. I was like, oh, I should have said this, but I was a little bit shy and a little bit slow thinking. So I think the online environments show that participation can happen there. It's not just the students who get their hands up the fastest, and a lot of interesting ideas are able to develop out of that, and you see that thread. And also to be able to kind of shrink it down into smaller groups, especially when you're dealing with a big class of 30 or more, there can be a lot of noise as people go off in other directions. Well, sometimes they'll just discuss this in your group, and there you feel even more comfortable because you've been working with your group for over the course of the semester, so you're more willing to share the ideas and bounce things around. And then maybe we'll open it up to the bigger group.
Initially, the students that I work with, they often have other careers. They're often not really well versed in new technologies, and so they're really resistant because they think it's a lot of work and they don't think that it's really important. They see teaching, which is what I'm talking about, as face-to-face, you're working together in a classroom. And so it sometimes takes a little bit of encouraging them to try out some of these technologies. And they're taking my class at the same time as they're taking an ICT class, so they're getting some taste of they could do these things on their own and then use them and talk about them in the Moodle space. So all of their learning is sort of coming together in different ways, and that motivates them. They start to see that this is actually fun, and it's actually useful, and it's actually a practical kind of thing, which are really key components for them, especially the practical. If they think that this is just a hoop to be jumping through, then they're not as keen to do it. So the motivation comes from their own back and forth, their own encouragement of each other, actually. And that really stimulates them to collaborate. And actually, they take up each other's ideas in kind of a seamless way. So they think they were their ideas, even though they heard them from somebody else first. So that we're all learning in a much broader way than we would be doing if we were doing that in an individual way. And that, of course, stimulates them to inquire because they're not being judged on whatever inquiry it is that they have about a particular student or a particular issue that they have seen or a particular practice or belief that they've had that they're now challenging and questioning. So I had several students actually at the beginning a bit resistant, and at the end saying, wow, you know, I'm sold on this. I'll use these kinds of technologies in working with my own kids in classrooms. So that to me is the greatest indicator that what we're doing is of benefit and of value in helping them learn better.
I also would like to suggest that educators look to perhaps their publishers and to other sort of non-traditional sources. Well, non-traditional in the instructional technology venue, but traditional in the old venue. For example, I have had excellent assistance from the bookstore. So Penny Draper and the folks that she works with at the bookstore have really been very supportive about getting technology that I've decided I want my students to use bundled together. All of her staff know what my students need, so that when my students, and my students are first-year students, when they go to the bookstore to look for the package or a group of things that my class demands or requires of them, all the staff in the bookstore know, oh well, it's here, 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 and here. It just it sets the students off to go, gee, well, it sounds like everything's organized, so they expect that when they're not starting off from this playing field where they don't know what they really need or when they need it, that sort of thing. At least for the majority, at least that's what I try to do. So we got the bookstore. Another place to go for resources is your publisher. So my publisher of the texts that I use in the class actually this term provided me with 2 student assistants. They hired the students for me for my simulation software. They paid the students, and the students work essentially for the publisher. The students get an interesting thing on their resume. They get to be really integrally involved with the delivery of course material, and they are eating it up. They're loving it. And I'm really loving having them, and so are my TAs, because these students were my students last term. And so they experienced the course from a full student perspective, and now because of the publisher, my publisher, which is Pearson, I have been able to bring them in and use them in the class setting. So there are resources all over the place. Right now, we need to pull them together. I think it would be really great in the big picture at UVic if we had an umbrella instructional technology, education technology strategy that integrated across programs, across curriculums. Hard to do, but big picture.
instructors in general should be more careful and thoughtful about the kind of classrooms we have and classroom design and how you utilize it and so on. I'm always trying to get a good classroom and very disappointed when the environment doesn't work out for me. But I think you also have to think that as much as a classroom now, the online presence is part of your course, and it's as important, if not more important, than the classroom. So the first tool is the learning management system. And then there's a variety of activities within that system. I use online discussions, I use weekly quizzes, I use a peer assessment system, I utilize constant announcements, I use clickers in the classroom, and these are among the most important sort of sets of technologies. So in terms of trying to address what strategy each one, it's hard to do it as an omnibus case. I mean, I think I'd have to deal with specific cases to answer that question completely, but.
Want to then talk about a specific case here?
Well, yeah, I guess one of the the activities that I've initiated in my classes that I'm most interested in right now, and that I think is probably among the more innovative ones, is in my third-year classes. I've worked out a peer review system that I use for assignments that I use in lieu of essays. And some of the presentations I've given on this topic, I get very dramatic and call it the death of the essay. And so talking a little bit about that particular project or that particular activity, as many of the things that I do, I come from sort of a dissatisfaction with what's been going on in the classroom. And in this case, the dissatisfaction is with the essay. I mean, I think the essay is dead. We should bury it because here's what usually happens in my experience is that the students are given an essay, the usual 10-page essay, double-spaced, with the appropriate citation formatting and so on of the discipline that the course is in. The students spend some time at the end of the term frantically trying to get it together. They may get a little guidance from the instructor along the way, or they may not. They hand in their 10 pages at the end of the term. The instructor will spend a week or two, a lot of time and effort at the end of the term giving marks on the essay, give it back to the student. And of course we know, and I don't think this is just apocryphal, many students will look at the mark or not, put it away, don't even look at the comments. And it's understandable. These human beings are on to different things. I mean, in some ways, that's the end of the course, that's the end of the learning. I don't think that's a useful learning exercise. What's been learned there? Also, there's the facts of plagiarism and online sources and so on, all this kind of thing. To say nothing of the waste of trees and the paper involved. So instead of that, I was looking for some other, but I think the idea of having some kind of a project that serves as a focus for the student, the demonstration of the students' learning and of their mastery of some aspects of the analytical tools that they are supposed to have developed within the course and of the knowledge and the course content is useful. And we want to go beyond just examinations in a course. I was familiar with a journal, a peer-reviewed journal called Behavioral and Brain Sciences. And a peer-reviewed journal is a journal where the scholars post their articles, often theoretical articles that have some pretty broad interest within their discipline. And a number of their peers, other scholars who have some interest or knowledge in this area, are invited to reply. And it's a very, very lively journal, very engaging. They do cover the waterfront in the social and brain sciences. A lot of material there that's relevant to evolutionary psychology, which is my own subdiscipline within psychology. And I've found it's a very good model for scientific and scholarly discourse because indeed you get the transparency, it's public, you get experts sort of like engaging in scholarly discourse appropriate to their discipline and so on. So I wanted to do something like that in my third-year courses instead of an essay. And Blackboard and Moodle helped me facilitate that. So what I do is I give students, I have them choose from a number of assignments or their assignment questions. And I will only let 2 students choose a given question. So a question might be, did humans evolve to wage war? There's a question from one of my evolutionary psychology, from my evolutionary psych course. And 2 students could choose that one. And then what they have to do is to essentially write an essay-style answer to that question. And it's shorter than a regular essay. It's only about 5 pages because I think they can say and demonstrate their scholarly acumen in that space. And also, I don't particularly want to be reading very much more than that. They post that online, and it's publicly accessible to everyone in the class. Everyone in the class can see what they posted. And then, as part of their assignment, they're expected then to comment, to make a one-page comment on 3 of their colleagues' assignments. And then they make a response to the comments that they have. And that's what they do in lieu of the essay. They have their 5-page assignment to a specific assignment topic. They have their 3, so they have to read 3 of their colleagues' papers, and then they have to respond to this. There are a number of advantages to this system compared to the essay. One is the whole thing's public, and this is what science is about. I mean, this whole idea of people writing essays themselves and handing it to another person, and the only people who know about it are these 2 people. This is absurd when we're talking about scholarly or scientific discourse. Scientific discourse, in its nature, has to be public. That's one of the things that differentiates scholarly and open to criticism from all sides. It's one of the things that distinguishes scholarship and science from many other aspects of human endeavors. Now, another thing this does is public. It involves the students interacting with each other in a systematic, formal way. And I find the students love this because now they get to see what other people are doing. And sometimes it's a real eye-opener, I think, for students. Sometimes students say, wow, what other students are, that's pretty good. I better pick up my game here because, these students are doing some good work. Another benefit from this is I learn a tremendous amount. It's not just the instructor commenting on these papers, and I certainly know enough of my discipline to be able to knowledgeably comment on all these topics, but it's also the other students. So the students learn when they do the assignment, but now they're also learning, and maybe learning even more when they're critiquing their colleagues' comments or colleagues' assignments. And then they have to do the whole synthetic thing of putting it all together now. They think about what they said originally, they think about what their colleagues have said, and now they come up with it. More learning takes place, rather than the one shot, here's stuff I've put together, you look at it, that's it, learning done. And another one of the best practices in undergraduate education is doing everything you can to encourage cooperation and contact among students. So this I think is great for that purpose. So in a nutshell, that's what I've done. I give the students the usual, actually I give them 15% of their course mark for that, which is maybe a little less than most essays would give. And I found it to be marvelous. I mean, I really find the students seem to really appreciate this much more than doing an essay. It's more bite-sized. Instead of a 10-page essay, you do a 5-page assignment. It cuts down on plagiarism because I can control the topics. I think if a student does an essay, they can go into an essay kind of like, a symbolism in Henry Miller's novels or something and find, a gazillion sources on the web and change a few words, and that escapes the, plagiarism detectors and so on, and then they can hand it in. But if I'm setting the topic, it's less likely they can do it. I mean, I can try to set a topic that is not going to be, it's going to be a little harder to find that specific topic on the web. And I also ask for recent references in a certain way that means that it's harder for
So another technology we used to engage students is online discussion forum. And in this case, we used Moodle. And in the way I set up the activity online is I organized two-week-long online discussion. Each one is on a specific topic. So the first one is a general topic about the concept of evaluation and various approaches to evaluation. In this case, we already discussed in class, but I wanted to move on to online to give them a chance to further reflect on the subject matter. And indeed, that happened within 2 weeks. While they were away from the classroom, they engaged online. And the student really penetrated into the subject matter. And that's exactly what I want to see to happen. And in that process, they also interact with each other intensively. And I was also there to interact more like a participant rather than a teacher in that context. And it worked out quite well. The second topic we used was directly related to their class project, which is to come up with an evaluation plan. Sometimes, or you can call it evaluation/research plan, which directly relate to the capstone project as part of their degree requirement. So I asked each student to post a research question/evaluation question and invite the rest of their group members to comment on the question of their own. So they each have to comment to other people's questions, but also engage the group members to work and help them on their own questions. So these are two activities of different nature. One is very much concept-oriented discussion. The other is more like project-oriented and product they have to produce to come up with a plan how to answer that question by the end of the 2-week period.